All right, everyone, welcome to the Full Fine Podcast, the very first edition. And today's guest is one of my dear friends, one of my dear clients as well, Frank Pons. How are you doing, Frank?
I'm great. How's it going?
Going great. Cannot complain at all. Thanks for hopping on this podcast, man. Really appreciate it.
Likewise. Thanks for inviting me, man. I'm honored to be on the very first one of the many, I hope.
Of the many, of course. Awesome. So, Frank, I think we should start off by way of introduction. So if you can start by introducing yourself, that'll be awesome, man.
Yeah, sounds good. So for anybody that doesn't know who I am, I'm a producer from both social media and films. Range from anybody. Some of the clients I've worked with are like someone like Mr. Beast. And then I've done 4 movies in the last 3 or 4 years, give or take. And then I did a TV show. I was developing that for a couple of years. Did that here out in LA. I'm actually just visiting here / working. I always like to do a work / I live a lifestyle where I've gotten to a point now in my career where I try to work and play. I try to have a good balance of the two. But I've been in this industry for a little over 13 years now, give or take. And I'm talking starting from the bottom as a production assistant all the way up to a full-fledged producer, filmmaker, whatever you call it, creator. You're wearing multiple hats once you get to this level. Yeah. So I find myself wearing, I juggle quite a bit.
Awesome. So me and Frank, fun fact, actually met up in Bali last December. He visited. Unfortunately, his fiance got food poisoning over in, was it Thailand, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. We were in the Philippines. It was her first time, and she had the Manila belly hit her towards the end of the Philippines trip. So, it was her. It was maybe like 3 or 4 days, where we were kind of holed up in the hotel for a little bit, but it was still fun nonetheless. We spent pretty much the entire month of December in the Southeast Asia. So it was a fun time. I got to see my family I hadn't seen in years in the Philippines. So I'm half Filipino. I got family in Mindanao. And it was my first time in Bali. It was probably one of the most insane experiences. I wish I was there longer. One of the most surreal experiences there. I hope to come back and visit soon.
Yeah, you're always welcome back. I'll be happy to stay with you longer this time. I think we only met for lunch. So would love to show you around next time you're here.
Yeah, man. I would love that.
Sure. Awesome. So let's get straight into the meat of it. So Frank here, he's, as you guys have heard, worked in Hollywood, works with some very big creators. So we're going to start off there. And we actually are going to start off with a very, very spicy topic, which is AI, the strikes, creators leveraging AI, the whole industry is getting shaken up. And Frank here is one of the very best people to get an insight on this. So let's start with the Hollywood side of it. So, Frank, could you maybe share a bit? I know we discussed this a bit in Bali, but it wasn't recorded, but it was a really fun conversation. So how do you think AI has beginning to change the landscape of, content creation in Hollywood?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. It's actually a big reason why there was a strike last year. A lot of folks were concerned, not just on the writers level, but like just across the board. I mean, there's there seems to be a track record now, or at least the way it's been developing and the progress and the rate it's been developing is very alarming, where it would, if it's unregulated, if it goes unregulated, then it could potentially decimate the workforce as we know it. But that said, there are now some rules in place. I think there's been several unions now that have now figured out how to at least, I won't say postpone it, but figure out a way to kind of have it looked at, how to use AI and leverage AI as a tool versus as a replacement for a job. Mm-hmm. And my main argument, at least when I speak to other creatives, is that, look, you can help. There are tools out there. There's a tool we're using right now, right, to kind of reach each other on the other side of the world, where, it's a way of like, I like to think of it as a way of kind to, if you're trying to build a house, you can kind of assemble some of the blueprints, but there's still innate human, I don't want to say desires, but innate human. There's like a touch that
you still
I don't
need
think AI
somewhere in there.
Yeah, that AI cannot replicate. I mean, if you were to try to develop a script, throw into ChatGPT, I'm sure if you were to try to have some kind of extensive prompt, there's actually a great Casey Neistat YouTube video where he literally puts in a prompt, type in a Casey Neistat video, and he enacts it the way ChatGPT does it. And it's a great video. It's not there. There's no I hate to say this, but it's there's no real creativity, like real human connection to it. It just understands a format, but it doesn't go deep into, what we call storytelling. And I think that's what we're, at the end of the day in Hollywood, that's what we're all trying to achieve is to tell a compelling story, which I don't think AI is there yet, across the board. Like whether it's images or I don't know, some of the videos that I've seen that have been kind of shown my way just hasn't. There's just something that doesn't feel real about it, if that makes sense, right?
Yep.
There's like an authenticity thing. So if it does go in that direction, I do believe there's going to be somewhat of a division of folks wanting to crave like real, authentic human stories, and they'll probably, I don't know if it'll get to this level, but there'll probably be a way of marketing it in such a way, saying this was 100% human-made, human-crafted film, right? At least, there'll be fragments of that. I do believe that there will be a demand for that. I'm starting to see that right now, at least on the content creation side of things. Is hey, did you use AI for this? There's a couple clients that do like that. I could see where it could kind of speed up and at least making some logistical decision making. But as far as the creative, I can't see it replacing humans. So there's that. I just think humans, there's just a fundamental human touch to a video or a movie or whatever. It could be a reel, right? I just don't see it. At least I hope. I don't see it replacing human artists at all. Maybe 5-10 years down the line, but I just don't see it permanently positioning artists in such a way that's not transitioning, that don't want to transition into doing it. I like to, like I said, I like to use it as a tool. I just see filmmakers as a whole that will still have jobs. Does that make sense? I just feel there was a panic for a little bit, for a solid year. I've heard it from multiple ends, whether it be from writers to even post-production folks, I don't know, sound design. I was talking to someone who works at Sony. I don't think their jobs are going to get replaced. So I don't know. I might be old school. This is where my age might start to catch up to me, but I just don't see it. Not in for immediate future, at least.
Do you think, right, even if it gets to that point, because Elon Musk and everyone always talks about AGI, which means AI will reach a point where it can, make decisions like us, think like us, be as creative as us, because, that Casey Neistat video, and then, just using AI for content creation, it's usually just a starting point instead of the end product, right? It can help you
Sure.
brainstorm a few here and there, but that's probably it. If it ever reaches that point, Frank, do you think, right, what will happen to the industry if it actually reaches to a point where we can't really differentiate what is AI made and what is human made? What do you think?
Then there will be at least a demand for authentic, human crafted content, experiences, whatever you want to call it, right? I look at, just for comparison, for art, if you will, I don't know, maybe the fashion industry, right? Fast fashion, while it's cheap, if we're being honest, right? It's just not something that that's not a premium experience as you would as a handcrafted Prada leather jacket, right? That is artistically made. There's there's pastures and whatnot, and how they make the leather. There's an actual craftsmanship as to getting a Prada leather jacket, right, that comes from Italy.
Yeah.
I believe there'll be that level of like human crafted content of there will be people who make premium stuff on that level, right? Like the way I look at it is like James Cameron is probably the number one filmmaker in Hollywood, right? The guy just hits bangers out of the park. And the irony of that, he made a movie on AI with at least the doomsday scenario with Terminator.
Yeah.
But that said, I just don't see if it does go in that direction, it'll be fragmented, and when it's fragmented, I think there will be, just a better. If anything, I think there'll probably be a better fragmented, curated versions of content. People will still want to connect with other people, right? Hey, if people want to connect with AI and robots and stuff, that's cool too. That's a likely scenario. If they want to go there, that's fine. I'm sure that's going to be a topic across not just art, but even in relationships, right? Like I have a friend who's developing an app where you talk to like an AI, I don't know, like an AI chatbot, right? Where you can date someone through your chat.
Oh, okay.
Cool. Right? Like, I'm sure that will solve some people's like desire to want to connect. Correct.
Yeah.
I'm sure it will solve that aspect of it, but I don't know. I just don't see us being replaced as artists. If anything, I think there'll be probably more in demand for it. I think there'll be, it'll be looked at as like the way we look at. I mean, I just made that comparison with the fashion industry, but I also akin to like even traditional painters or traditional like actual like canvases and stuff, right? Like, I don't know.
They're still in demand.
Yeah, exactly. They're still in demand. Like these people are still working to do this stuff, and it's just another form of art, another iteration of it, right? Whether it's the next evolution of art, that's to be argued. I had that debate recently. How there are now AI artists out there that know how to, they know I call them prompt engineers more or less because they know how to design a prompt, and that's probably an art in itself, to come up with a compelling image, right, or something that draws a lot of viewers' attention, right? I think like it's kind of scary because there are certain videos that I've seen now that's just so photorealistic. I do believe, I mean, Elon's kind of right about this, where it will get into a territory where you can't distinguish whether it's real or not, right? Like we're still at the precipice of that happening.
Yeah, and how fast it moves, really scary if you think about it. Yeah, but you mentioned a bit about human connection there.
Yeah,
we're gonna move a bit
alarming
topic towards content creators as humans, and you work with the biggest one there is now, Jimmy, Mr. Beast, right? So most of my audience will be like creators, agencies looking to basically present themselves on social media. So what is it about him that makes it him? What is it about him that makes him get all these views, what is it about his content that draws so much attention? Like just from you working with him, I know you went to the Arctic with him, which is a really cool video. So can you share a bit more? What is it about him that makes him stand out?
Yeah, man. It's a great question because he is certainly, he's brilliant at what he does. He's very, very dialed in to his audience. He really knows his audience very well. I think that's probably one of the number one things for sure. If you're going to get into this game, really know your audience. Like he does it in such a way where it's accessible, right? Like I run into this with, I actually learned this early on. There's a couple other creators I've worked with where I might have maybe overwritten or made things a little too complicated, and they're able to distill it and simplify it in its purest form, right? An idea, right? So if he gives me a title and thumbnail, like I'm like, oh, that's so simple. It's easy. That's kind of like the first thing he goes after is like, if it's a title and thumbnail, that's the very first, that's the very top of the funnel, right? Like, what's the title and thumbnail to this? If that's not compelling enough to make a video, then, we scrap it. And another thing is, he really treats it like a business. Like, he has multiple departments for YouTube that I've never seen before. So there's like a thumbnail department. The department I was in charge of, I had a production team with 10 producers. There was also 5 writers, and then there's 5 editors. So, that's the highest level I've seen it at. And then there's like, he's got an $11 million studio. There's, it's a massive team. I think he's got like over 100 people now. He just crossed 300 million. I know, at least as of last week, he's the largest YouTube channel.
Yeah.
But he does have multiple channels. There's Mr. Beast in Espanol. There's, he's in so many different languages.
The charity one.
That's another thing, actually. Like, another hack that I've tried to tell other clients is to translate your videos across the board. There's like, Mr. Beast in Espanol, Mr. Beast in Hindi. I believe there's one in Japanese, and then there's like 7 other ones I probably can't recall off the top of my head. But yeah, translate your videos. That's another growth hack. And don't be just known for your region. Try to be known across the world. I didn't know how much I knew he was a massive influencer, obviously, but it wasn't until I started traveling with him. We went to India, and it's a good thing I kind of had things in place to make sure we were going to get to the airport. Okay. I had like security and everything, but I've never seen like the level of like, once we checked, this is good example, a good story. Went down to Punta Arenas, Chile to get to Antarctica. It's the southernmost town in the world. And there's a hotel there. I could tell like when I'm checking into the hotel, they're kind of like, the person was like, "Hey, you guys with Mr. Beast?" I'm like, "Yeah, we are. But, keep it on low, please. Don't tell anybody that we're here," that kind of thing. And sure enough, within an hour, that lobby was filled, at least 200 kids full of folks trying to get a glimpse of Jimmy and the guys. So, that's the level of impact you can have if you play it smart. There's no real secret sauce, to be honest with you. He just knows how to nail what's best for his audience and doing it in the most entertaining way possible. So, we can get into the weeds of like, there's retention tricks and all that stuff, but just try to make the audience. Yeah, just really it. It's just trying to entertain your audience to the best possible way you can.
Awesome. So I know we touched about this in Bali a bit, how meticulous he is and how he's really, it needs to be done in a certain way and it needs to be done right? So I think you told the story about, because I place editors, worked with you with editing, how the higher the level someone is, the more they want to get something done in a certain way, right? And I think you told the story about how Jimmy was the same. So can you tell, the audience a bit on that story, on how, he proceeded to re-edit, revise a video up until, the whole story of him not using it?
Yeah. It's actually, it feels like an art, like the way he looks at an edit. So what he'll do is, he'll have someone come up to him with a phone, or like it's usually an assistant editor, an AE, and it's either on a phone or a tablet or a laptop. Most of the time, I think I've seen him only kind of like review it on a phone. And he'll meticulously, like the very first minute is the most important of a video. He'll almost like second per second, beat per beat, like try to see if something works or doesn't, right? Whether it's a graphic, whether it's something someone said, take it out. I see him like the edits tend to be longer at first, and then there's like a subtraction element to it, right? I could see him just like completely editing right there on the spot, like watching it. And the assistant editor will, in order to get notes, they're recording him as he's delivering these notes, watching the entire video the whole way through. And if he doesn't like an edit, he'll pretty much straight up tell you, like within the first minute, oh, he's like, I don't need to watch the rest of this. Just needs a lot of work in the first minute. So the very first there's like almost a blueprint as to how it works. So the very first 5 seconds, you really got to hook them. You got to promise the premise of the video and over deliver within the first minute. I mean, the first 10 seconds, and then within the first minute, really, really just drive it home. So, for example, the $1 versus $1 million, $500,000 hotel. We went out of our way to showcase this $1 hotel, like completely out of our way. It was very expensive to get out there. The $1 hotel in Jaipur, India. I'm talking flying, the boys, Jimmy, my cameramen, pretty much my entire crew to come out there, all for 30 seconds of content, right? And we made the most of it. The very first 30 seconds. And then by the end of those 30 seconds, it kind of showcases what you're expected to see in the remainder of the video. And so that's kind of I hope that answers it. Like, that's kind of the most important part, is the very first minute of your video, and then really flesh out. You can kind of take your time towards the end, but really try to flesh out what is the audience getting in this video. Do that in the first minute, and you promise it, and you over deliver in the first minute, you're going to have a successful video.
Awesome. That is some great tips there. Frank here, of course, has worked with a lot of businesses as well, not only creators / businesses, I guess. Nowadays, like, creators are businesses, you could say, right? So for all, the audience watching here that are probably using YouTube for a more lead generation, or a more, they're trying to find customers, what do you think are lessons that we can apply from these creators that are content first to businesses that use YouTube primarily not as a way to kind of entertain, but kind of sell?
Yeah. Are you talking about more for informative versus entertainment?
Yeah, I'm talking about, like, when like YouTubers like Mr. Beast or like PewDiePie, they come to YouTube because they are entertainers, right? They want to entertain.
Correct.
So they kind of treat it as more entertainment instead of, okay, I'm here to sell something,
Yeah. For informative stuff, so there's two buckets of content here. I kind of I juggle between both, right? With entertainers, that's mainly like my 80. I have an 80-20 principle that I kind of apply to content. 80% I'm kind of entertaining most of the time. That's where I have fun. But 20% is the more informative side of me, right? So I always say you always want to over-deliver on the knowledge that you have and sell the implementation, right? So you literally, like what I just said in my blueprint of like what the first minute of a Mr. Beast video is, if you really go back and check out all the videos, it's all there. You check out, I don't know, the last year worth of videos, the very first minute you could tell Jimmy's just over delivering. I say that even with informative content, right? Really over deliver as much as you can, as much as you know. And then have it be so good that no matter who's watching, be like, man, this person is a genius at this. There's no way I can learn. If there's a way to bypass this, I'm going to hire this person to implement it. So you sell the tools, sell the knowledge. I'm sorry, give away the knowledge, give away the tools, sell the implementation. That's really it. That's the key. I've given away my I got like a production template that I kind of give away if anybody wants to produce a video. But once they see it, they're like, oh, this is an insane amount of work. This is not easy. When people ask me what a producer does, I'm like, it's a lot. Here, I'll give you my tools. I'll show you how to use it. But if you got to figure out a way to implement it, that's when you hire me. So that's what I always say. No matter, that works for pretty much all the trades, any trade you can think of. You could sell your tools as well. I know like editors that sell, like Hayden has a course. He sells his knowledge. but he also gives away a lot of it on his YouTube channel. Um,
Yeah.
you know, there are photographers out there that sell LUTs, right, and sell like you know, color graded materials, right? So yeah, I would say like give away the tools, or at least, you know, have that be a fraction of it, and the implementation is really where you're going to make a living.
Awesome. So you've been in the industry for quite some time, right? You've worked with a lot of people. Has your approach to content changed over the years at all? You know, working with all these different people, Mr. Beast. I know you work with Ty Lopez as well. So has it changed at all? And if so, like how has it changed?
Oh, that's a great question. Principles of storytelling hasn't really changed too much. It's just the tools have changed, right? There are certain tools that I'm currently relearning and adapting to. Whether it be, you know, like with Adobe, I'm going over to, at first, I'll tell you this, like I was at first all in on Final Cut Pro when I first started in this industry. That's how old I am. I'm kind of giving away my age. And then I went into Premiere. I spent pretty much a good chunk of my career in Premiere and learning the paths to Premiere. I still use it. But now I see myself, I mean, since the last, I'd say year or two, and I'm kind of actually learning from Adrian, whom you just met prior to this, learning DaVinci, right? It was a color grading software that's now become, an industry standard. And so I feel like the tools have changed a lot. That's just an example, right? Even some of my screenplay software tools have changed. It's just the implementation of it, right? It's how you implement these tools into your workflow. That doesn't really change too much. I could probably shorten it if I'm being honest. I mean, to kind of talk a little bit with AI again, not to get too deep into it, but you know, you can design a prompt to like say, hey, I'm trying to figure out a certain fabric. Give me like 20 different fabrics that this character would wear during this time period, right? And then you don't have to like look in the books or look up on the internet to find out what kind of fabric a person wears. Just describe a person in a screenplay. You can just, you know, design that prompt into ChatGPT. So there are certain ways, like there are now shortcuts, I think, to help come up with whether it's a story or video, right? I just don't think the principles of storytelling are going to change too much. It's just the tools that'll change.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And, you know, over in my agency, you know, we try all, you know, you have HeyGen, which is an AI avatar. You know, everyone uses the script now. Apps for voices. So these stuff come like really fast. But you did mention a bit about storytelling, which primarily does not change because, you know, our team edited your filmmaking course. So, Frank, I don't know if you've released it. Have you released it yet?
I have not. No.
Look out for that, guys. For sure.
Yeah.
But we edited that and it was awesome.
Thank you. No, that was a really fun. No, it's really fun. There's still some things I'm tweaking, and once I launch the community and everything, I'm just kind of warming up the audience. I'm just trying to deliver as much as I can. Like I said, over deliver as much as I can on my knowledge and everything that I've learned in the last 13 years. And then once you get the course, then you're gonna really, like, if you want to take it up a notch, then you're gonna really know how to not only understand the philosophies of filmmaking, but really like find out who you are as a filmmaker. That's really what I'll try to tap into, because there's a lot of filmmakers that, especially early on, that either try to become the next Christopher Nolan or next Spielberg, whatever it is. Really try to figure out how to, you know, find your own voice. I think that's the best thing to do. At least that's what I try to do as a producer. I try to bring out the best of whoever I'm working with.
Yeah. And one of the most interesting things that we did was on our first call together, I think you asked each of my editor who their favorite director or film was, which is pretty fun. They had some really good choices. I've never actually asked them that as well. I was really proud that my team had really good taste in movies, to be honest. But coming to storytelling,
they really do. Really do. Yeah.
Coming to storytelling, Frank, you mentioned a bit about the same principles. Can you tell the audience a bit about, you know, what those principles are, as like maybe like a brief kind of like structure to what makes a good story?
Yeah, I look at stories as like a 3-act structure, right? That's really the base of it. There's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end, right? I kind of like to work from back. I like to reverse engineer. I like to work back and then work my way forward. Yeah, I try to, at least the longer the content, or at least the longer the piece of story that I'm trying to tell, I want to land it on a good note, right? I want to land it with a sense of hope, or land it with a sense of thought for the audience to think about for the next couple days, right? Now, for content, if it's shorter, I try to, it's kind of the opposite. You actually kind of want to make sure the intro and the beginning has the most information that you can, because you're at risk of, at being scrolled or checked out on something else, right? So, yeah, that's really it. Like that's the way I think of storytelling. Like with shorter pieces of content, I give as much value as I can to the very beginning. If it's longer pieces of a story, it's a slow. I don't want to say a slow build, but it's a build to something that's something towards the end that you're going to feel like, holy shit, like that just blew my mind, right? The masters of this are like, I mean, Christopher Nolan's the master of it at the moment, right? His endings are just mind blowing. Like you just don't anticipate a lot of a lot of his third acts, right? And they leave, for him, for example, they leave a really long impression, not just like after you leave the theater, but I'm talking like, you think about it for days and even weeks or even months, right?
That's Tenet for me.
Yeah, that's Tenet. Interstellar for me. Interstellar was like one of those films. I'm actually looking at my buddy Adrian has a poster up of Interstellar. I remember catching that with him about a decade ago, and that was one of those films where I thought about it long after I left the theater. So I always that's the way I kind of look at storytelling is the shorter piece of content. I always try to over deliver as much as I can on the front end of the first act. You can look at short pieces of content, 3 acts too. But you're the longer the video or the longer the story, the more you want to have a lasting impression at the end, because that's what everyone's going to talk about. If you land it with the ending, then you'll have a poster up 10 years from now somewhere in Hollywood. So anyway, that's the way I look at storytelling. Those are my 5-minute. That's kind of my 5-minute answer of like how I distinguish the two. There's still a 3-act structure. There's still a 3-act structure for both, by the way. They're like, you can still apply the 3-act structure, but and if you want to do the hero's journey, the Joseph Campbell thing, there's a book out there, Hero's Journey. That's what George Lucas had kind of modeled much of Star Wars from. And this is another thing. I kind of mentioned it in the course. Is everything's really a remix, right? There's a saying Pablo Picasso says, good artists copy, great artists steal. So you look at some of the biggest stories. I mean, just to kind of go back to Star Wars, all George Lucas was ripping was Hidden Fortress by Akira Kurosawa. If you look at that movie, it's pretty much the first 2 acts of Star Wars, or the very first one, episode 4, New Hope. And then he takes a lot of what Joseph Campbell had dissected in his book to kind of help model some of the archetypes that are and the characters that are in that story. So yeah, everything's a remix. There's a lot of movies and stuff out there. Lion King, that's pretty much a ripoff of Hamlet, of Shakespeare's Hamlet.
Yeah.
There's there's a lot of stories out there that's just kind of ripping off someone else. So it's just like another version of that. The Dark Knight is really like it's not carbon copy of Heat, but Heat it takes a lot of inspiration. The Dark Knight takes a lot of inspiration to the tone and the feel and even the characters of Heat, right? So yeah, I always look to the best and see what your own spin for it would be to make that a little bit more original.
Yeah, sounds great. So, looking at that, if someone we're going back to, someone trying to start their journey as a creator, maybe start a YouTube channel, what do you think are the 3 most important things that they need to do in the beginning to actually start getting some traction? And this advice will apply to me as well, because I'm also beginning my YouTube / content journey as well.
Yeah, that's great. Great. So, okay. Well, first off, I mean, if you're a creator, don't get too caught up on, unless you're like a DP or a craftsman in the trade of, like, say, like a director of photography, or a camera guy if you're reviewing cameras or something. Don't worry about the equipment. Like, throw that out the window. Equipment, you can tell a story with a GoPro, right? One of my favorite YouTubers right now, actually, it's the other Neistat brothers, Van Neistat. He shoots everything mostly with a GoPro, right? But he's such a good, compelling storyteller. Like, you're hooked, really. So that's the number one thing, is figure out what your message is and try to narrow it down to a specific avatar as to who you're delivering that message to. The best way to do that is, like, if you're trying to do something that you feel passionate about, that you're literally kind of speaking to yourself. If yourself is the avatar, then that's probably going to be the easiest thing, is to really, really hone in on your voice. I say this in my course. I say this across the board with anybody I work with, is just try to figure out what your voice is. Don't worry about trying to like replicate, like, I don't know, the Alex Hormozis of the world, right? I know that's a very popular, there was a popular trend. They're, I think we're kind of shifting away from the Hormozi style of content, but don't worry about trying to replicate that. Really just try to be yourself. If you don't, I think you kind of run the risk of being either a copycat, which I've seen time and time again, whether it's Mr. Beast or some of these other creators I've worked with, where they try to copy each other. But you won't really distinguish yourself as to being yourself, right? So there's that. And once you find out that you're so good, I've seen this. I mean, I saw it with Ty, I saw it with Jimmy. Once you're so good at really finding your voice and finding what you do, people are going to start to copy you, right? So that's the number one thing. Number two, I would say have multiple formats, not just one format. Have multiple formats, right? I've seen this with Ty and Jimmy. They have so many different formats of how they deliver content. Ty is mostly informative, right? And I remember there was a period, there was like something called Lamborghini Lessons. I think it was like 2013 or 14, where he would just talk about whatever his philosophies in a Lambo. That's a very interesting format. There was, for Jimmy, and he also does, like, he's getting ready to release some podcasts that are in his garage. That's another format. With Jimmy, he's got, like, I was in charge of, like, the $1 versus $1 million series. That was a format, right? There's a lot of stuff that's in studio. I don't say they're in studio. Yeah, they're like 1-year-old versus 100-year-old. That's a format, right? There's like there's like a format called, like, survival, like Jimmy survives, right? So Jimmy, I survived 50 hours in Antarctica. I survived, like, on an island, that kind of stuff. I survived buried alive for a week. There's that kind of format. And then there's there's like a charity side of Jimmy, right? So there's a format specifically for charities. I cured 1,000 blind people, right? So just really find your interests and figure out, like, just literally draw these circles. Like, you can make a Venn diagram out of this. Like, oh, I'm interested in this. I know how to produce content like this. That's a format. Cool. I think that's something I'd like to try. And if it does very well, double down on that. Really, like, go, okay, I'm gonna come up with more ideas in that format, and that's a format that's effective. If it doesn't work after 2 tries, I would kill it. Right, that's happened even on Jimmy's level. I've seen that. Like, he was like, "Oh man, that didn't do as well as I thought it was." Okay, that's a format I have to scrap. And that's across the board. It doesn't have to apply to just Jimmy. I just did this with my fiance. She's a creator, right? So there was like a format that I kind of cracked with her, where we go to small towns, where she's a travel creator, so she'll try out, like, mom and pop restaurants or where you can find a good cocktail or a bar or whatever, and she'll feature that and highlight that all in one reel, right? And that's a format that's very great for her. That's like very effective. So yeah, so 2 is formats, and then 3 is really having a good team. Like, if you're looking to build, if you're starting out by yourself, that's fine. I think it's like it's a hard road doing it by yourself, especially now, because I mean, it's just harder. I just think like having a solid team that understands your voice, that understands what you're trying to do with whether it's informative or entertaining. That's the next like unlock thing. Like that's the way I felt like I've unlocked my journey. Right. I've always worked with some of the best people that understands my language. Like I'm working, with one of my best friends here who understands the way I like to do things and understands like we kind of have the same mindset of filmmaking. We had the same like taste of filmmaking. That was actually a big reason why I asked you guys. Like I wanted to know what your tastes were so I could, see if we're aligned on the styles of videos that we make, right? I believe that's probably, I mean, you can kind of juggle all those 3 all together depending on the day, but like really just hiring the best people that you can to surround yourself with. If you have an A team, then you're going to go far. So Jimmy attracts, a team of like it's an A team. Like he wants to surround himself by A players that are just at the top of their game. You look at Tarantino. Tarantino kind of unlocked this early on. He said, hey, I don't have to be the DP to do this. Like I have an idea, the shot design for this, but Robert Richardson, if he hires him, he's one of the top guys, the top DPs, then he's going to take that frame that Tarantino has and make it better, right? Like he's going to be like, oh wait, there could be this, the lighting source, the lighting's going to be so much better under Robert Richardson's hands. And then, same thing with editing. Like for him, he had Sally Minky for a majority of his career. I mean, she's an Oscar-winning editor, right? So he just all he did was just hire the best. That's really it. And make sure they understand your vision, make sure they understand your taste. So that way they'll be able to translate the language of the story that they're trying to tell effectively in your vision, if that makes sense. Whether it's video or a movie.
Yeah, that's really, really awesome tips. You did mention a bit about Thai. That's kind of how we met. So one of the things you mentioned when we were in Bali was the Here in My Garage video, very iconic video. I think I first saw that ad when I was in high school, which is like a long time ago. So can you tell me more about what went into the ideation of, Here in My Garage video? Because that is one of the most iconic online, that's the original online guru ad, right? All the others, they're just like trying to copy even a fraction of that success. So can you tell me more about that story? Because that's very interesting.
Yeah, it's a great story. It's funny. It's 2013. I met him in 2011, 2012. It's kind of hazy, but it was around the time I first moved out to LA. And what's striking about Ty, he's able to, he's able to kind of tell if you know what your chops are. I don't know, whatever it is you're doing, whether you're an entrepreneur or whatever you're doing. Like he just kind of, he wants to know your level of expertise, and he asks the right questions to figure that out. With me, he did that with movies, right? Like when we first met, it was just like a brief, I thought it was going to be a 15-minute conversation, and evolved into a 3-hour conversation about movies. And in the beginning, when I first met him, I was like, I was working by day. I was working for an assistant to a producer, and then by night I was a projectionist at ArcLight Hollywood, which is like one of the most popular theaters, not in just Hollywood but into the world. Very exclusive. They have very strict policies, just very strict. But that said, I invite him. I was like, hey man, if you want to come out to the movies, it's very expensive to come out here or whatever. I can get you and your friends in. Come in whenever you want. And we became movie buddies. Fast forward to like 2013, I'm in his house in the hills, and he was like, hey man, I think I want to, there was one day I think he had a party or something, and invited me over, and we had this chat outside, and he was like, hey man, I think I want to do some stuff on YouTube. Like I want to become the Jim Rohn of YouTube. Do you think you can help me out? Like, come up with some of these videos and maybe shoot some of this stuff. And, he kind of knew that I was like an aspiring filmmaker. I was like, dude, this would be good. Like, I would love to, not only experiments, but I think this sounds pretty fucking cool. Like, I think there's some stuff there that might be, good for the audience, or at the time he had a pretty local audience in LA, but not worldwide. Right. And he would always kind of share these philosophies within LA. So he was already kind of somewhat of a local celebrity, but he hadn't broadcasted himself out to the world yet. And so it was a small team that he had. It was a very trusted team, but I brought on Adrian to help me shoot some of this stuff. And I remember, like, there was a day where they wanted to shoot some ads, and I think he was talking to his business partner at the time. They were either going to go out and go to the Laugh Factory or a Comedy Store, I can't remember, or they were going to, get to work and hustle and really just like try to come up with a really cool ad, right? So we had a couple different iterations. I had set up like a cinematic version of Here in My Garage, in his garage, where it was, it wasn't handheld. It was very much like with a camera. I had lights and everything, and it was just him kind of talking to camera without him holding it. And then he was like, I think I want to try another version of this. And he already kind of had an outline of what he wanted to hit. He had like what's called like 39 triggers of all these like basically like these biases that people have, so you can hook people in. And yeah, so long as he hit all those marks, then he felt like he would have a compelling ad. And so he did this with the camera, but the most like the take that we all see and know today, like I honestly didn't think it was going to be effective. I was like, man, that seems so amateur, but at the same time, there's something that kind of draws you in about it. You know what I mean? It's very much in many ways, he's kind of like one of the first guys to really pioneer the amateur by design aesthetic is what I call it. Jimmy does this, the amateur by design aesthetic. Like, he literally has like one of his best friends like hold a camera, right? And he's had to learn how to become a camera guy for the last, like, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, because he's an amateur, right? Well, he started out as being an amateur. He's become more professional. But that said, that amateur by design, like holding a camera and just being like, here in my garage, just having that feel felt different. And that translated. The next day when they ran it, I was talking to Jeremy, who was his one of his best friends who was running his marketing and everything. And he was like, dude, I've never seen numbers like this before. Like, this is going bonkers. And then, within a week we were like, it was very apparent. It was like, okay, you're going to have to start hiring people. And, within a month, the team got bigger. We had to hire a video team, and, because he wanted to output more videos, and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. So I didn't know it was going to, like, the day I knew that Ty was like probably on the next level or whatever you want to say was when he got stopped. I think we were like a Barnes and Noble or whatever, and people were stopping him. We're like, hey, you're the YouTube guy. Yeah, I've seen you. And anyway, that became like a recurring thing. It became not just a local celebrity, but like worldwide. He's been stopped at airports, the whole nine. Pretty crazy. Like, I never thought like something like that. I'd be part of like a meme, if you will, at least behind the scenes of a meme. What's considered, I'd say, like the Internet Hall of Fame of content, not just YouTube ads.
For sure.
But it just kind of happened organically, if I'm being honest. It was, that day, it wasn't even like, he didn't give, I think what I learned from that was not to overthink it. Don't overthink, like, you come in with a plan, you can have an outline. I think Ty's had, some points to hit, and that video that was effective to keep the viewer watching, to retain the viewer as much as possible. And I was very effective. Whether I got to say, like, the amateur by design aesthetic, that kind of just proved me wrong. Like, that translates well on YouTube. It felt very personal. It's not. I have to look at YouTube as a playground to be a little bit more loose, right? don't. I try to stay. I'll leave the polished side of my productions to movies, but the unpolished version of it, that's more authentic, or that's more, real, whatever you want to call it, that's really fit for YouTube. That's what I learned from that experience. And then I started working with other YouTubers that were very much like that afterwards, that were just, more authentic, more amateur by design. We had like a structure and script and everything in place, and we can kind of hit those beats, but we didn't have to absolutely live and die on that script. So that's the way I look at it, man. YouTube is a playground for delivering your message as much as best possible. You can do that with a GoPro or your phone, really. So yeah, that's really it. That's the lesson I learned specifically from that video, from the Here in My Garage video.
That's awesome, man.
It's crazy. That was like 10 years ago. It's crazy. 10 years ago, we're still talking about it. So insane.
It's insane because, like people like me, I'm from Indonesia. I went to high school in Indonesia, and like the fact that I can even talk about it, it's pretty insane if you think about it. Like he's on the other side of the world. It's that far reaching, what you did with him. So props to you, man. That's insane. So when we talk about, Ty, Mr. Beast, and then you specifically, because you've worked with a lot of teams around the world, right? You can mention anything, scripting, designing, anything, right? So how have your experience been, because cultural wise, I think you were born, you're half Filipino. So how have you found it, working with talent all over the world? Because obviously the theme of my podcast will always be about remote talent, right? So how have you found working with different people, different cultures? How have you found it?
It was very much by. That's a great question, actually. So I grew up a military brat, and there's probably a fraction of us. There's a lot more people than I thought. That's for sure. But like my friend right here, I'm staying with, Adrian. He's also a military brat. So we had to adapt to the cultures that we lived in growing up, almost by design. You kind of had to make friends, and again, to show my age, like we didn't have social media until high school. So some of the friends I'm starting to reconnect to, a lot of my childhood friends. That's been cool. So as I've gotten older and as I've adapted, I'll say this: I was kind of the first. Right after college, I was one of the first people to adapt into social media. Right, okay. Right out of college, so I got a degree in advertising and mass communications. So I knew a lot about, like, in a minor in media arts. So I knew a lot about like storytelling, screenwriting, and doing that on almost not just a news level, but like also on an ad level. Like I knew how to tell a story within 30 seconds. I knew how to tell a story within 59 seconds. Right, that was like my bread and butter. Like literally for a solid year and a half, immediately right out of college, worked as a marketing producer. And so at that time, social media was still a place that wasn't taken as seriously. And I wanted to kind of, double down on that, because that's what I felt like I was good at, or was natural at. It was like a blue ocean, if you will. Have you heard of the blue ocean strategy?
Of course. No, I'll finish the book.
Yeah. So for your listeners, a blue ocean strategy, you kind of want to move into the direction of a blue ocean, right? So no matter what your expertise is, in this particular example with social media, there was not a lot of people utilizing YouTube or Twitter at the time, or even Facebook as a place to experiment with their videos, right? So it was just like a place for cat videos, or it was a place for like silly Charlie bit my finger style stuff. So I thought of it as a way to experiment, whether it's ads, cool creative stuff. I thought of it as a blue ocean, versus like the red ocean was trying to, get a spot for TV that's going to cost a lot of money or whatever. I thought the value was going to be a lot more towards the social media realm. And I proved my boss wrong. My boss at the time was like kind of old school, and I get it. I get it. Like that's what he's known for his last several years. But the theme of this is even in my life, is that you always have to adapt, right? You're always having to adapt, not in just to cultures, but into where the culture is shifting, right? If you don't adapt, then being honest, you die. Like you end up like getting kind of, I hate to say kind of like you just fall down in the ranks of where or demand, if you will, if you don't adapt. So because I was able to adapt with the social media at that time, I was able to kind of race the ranks and get promoted pretty quickly. I was able to like ask for more money for my expertise. So why I knew this stuff, it just became like a thing. I was like, oh shit, I think I might have found my calling, or I think I might have found something that I'm really, really good at. And that attracted the attention of a producer to come out in LA and learn the ropes of how LA works. So yeah, that's really the theme of it. It's just you got to adapt. My entire life, like I've moved around my entire life. Like, yeah, I lived in Japan for 7 years, lived in the Philippines for a couple of years, lived in the U.S. before my dad retired, lived in the U.S. maybe for a handful of years. Nebraska, North Carolina, Texas, California is the longest I've ever spent out here, was 10 years. That was pretty much the majority of my professional career. I lived in England. That's where I met my best friend. Was there for about 3.5 years. And every time I always felt like I had to adapt to that environment. So I use that switch in my head. I think that's just an innate thing at this point because I've just been doing that my whole life, is that that's what I do with my work. And every time I've done that, it's always helped me get to the next level, right? All the way up to where I'm at now. So I'm not saying there's like another level that I'm trying to unlock that's I got to adapt to some other things, but those are all challenges that I know that's deep within myself that I have to figure out how to adapt, right? Does that make sense? I know it's a little bit of a long-winded answer, but that's really it. It's just adapting.
Yeah, for sure. And with the teams you've worked like all over the world, you can talk editing, script writing, stuff that you can kind of like work with people all over the world. Like with me, for example, me and my team, right? So what are your thoughts on that? But I'm saying this like, for example, back then, maybe at the beginning of your career, you would probably only work with people within the US, right? You will only probably work with local talent. Right. What have you found so far, working with, people like me and my team out here in Indonesia? I know if you worked with some people from India, people in the Philippines, right. Are they as good? Are they even better? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Just using talent everywhere.
Yeah, that's a great question. I wish I could have used this back in high school. If I'm being honest, there was nothing like this back in the day. If I were to turn back the clocks, I mean, I wish I could have started that sooner, but it's all good. I mean, I got on it right when I started doing this a little bit more, I guess, more globally. Well, I'll say this. Okay, so I kind of transitioned to what I was saying in my previous answer, adapting to some of the traditional models that I've seen that worked out in Hollywood. I felt like some of them were very ineffective in the progress and the speed that I was working at. So some of the videos that I'd worked on at the time that did very well were teams that understood this on another culture that I didn't know, that had a different language of storytelling or a different language of delivering content, right? And so I like this is the reason why I like watching foreign films, because there are certain motifs and things that are unique within a culture, whether it's Thailand, Philippines, or Germany, that is innate to that culture. So what I was able to pick up on, like with your team, I was able to figure out, like, okay, I know your taste, I know the types of stories that you kind of tell, and the strengths that you guys kind of tell. So I have already an idea of like, okay, what can I pull out of that, and then try to, expand from that, right? So with your guys, I think of this, especially within the Southeast, you guys really have the same, like, there's a lot of same common American tastes that you guys have. One of the bigger ones is being comedy, right? I think there are some things with comedy that's really hard to break through sometimes, but for the most part, like, this is not to sound racist or whatever, but like, there are certain comedy there's certain comedy styles that's not going to land with someone that if I pull from Europe, right? Like I do have like some editor friends that are out from Europe. They don't understand the comedy that I have, or the comedy that most Americans would have, because they have a different style of comedy. Whereas in the Southeast, you guys are able to kind of pick up on some of these cues a lot better, or pick up on some of these these elements and styles of comedy, because you guys understand it better than the Europeans, if that makes sense. So yeah, there's that. I think there are certain styles that you guys have picked up on, and you guys have innovated on styles, which is something I really like. And that's something I kind of credit you guys. When we were working on the course, there was like some things that you guys expanded on. I think you guys understood what I was doing and the root of my idea, and you expanded upon it because we already kind of talked about the taste and the style and tone of the content that I was looking, to bring out. And so, yeah, that's really my job as a producer, is just to translate the language of story that best speak to me and resonate with the artist I'm working with, and pull as much as I can out to deliver something very compelling. So, I once I learned that with, I'd say, the last couple years, but certainly your team really just got it. I think I tip my hat off to you to recruit, the right people in place. That's certainly a talent, to pull together the right A players together. That's really like one of the pillars I said earlier, that the top three things that making a good video, like, you need a really solid team. And I think you already nailed that. You nailed that ahead before we started talking. So, yeah, man, that's really it. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, honestly, but I tend to think, if I'm being honest, the best teams I've felt like that worked efficiently and that understood, not just the mechanics of editing. I think anybody can learn the mechanics of editing. There are editors out here that understand the mechanics of editing pretty well, but the actual message within the content, that's the most important stuff. And I think you guys do, like, really understand that on a very instinctual level to my audience, right? So, yeah, that's it, man. That's my hopefully that answers your question.
It does. It kind of ties back to the culture question as well, because you can kind of see like the more of that Hollywood influence there out here in the Southeast, because that's all we watch, actually, like Hollywood, and everything comes back. If you watch Hollywood, you kind of understand American culture instinctively, even from like when you were a kid. You grew up like me watching Disney, Nickelodeon. These are all like American based shows and TVs and movies. Yep. So we kind of grew up on it. So definitely.
That makes sense, man. Like when I was I was a kid in the Philippines, I saw a lot of this stuff. A lot of the American, much of the American influence, not just in movies, but even music, right?
For sure.
That's how my mom, that's how she learned English, was learning how to sing some of these songs with the song slant and everything. And in the Filipino culture, karaoke is huge, so it's like that's how they all connect.
Sing.
Oh yeah. There's always a singer in my Filipino family. Unfortunately, I didn't inherit that, but I like to think I inherited at least some of the storytelling elements of it. That's something the culture, if you're raised in the consumption of the content that the content that you're consuming will often be the influence to the content that you're trying to deliver. Does that make sense? So
yeah, for sure.
So that's just a deep, innate human element.
Yeah, for sure. Growing up, that had a lot of influences with me as well. That's how I actually learned English as well, watching SpongeBob growing up. That's exactly it. So,
that's not a bad cartoon to learn.
Yeah, for sure. Like, same process. And I think it's when you're a kid, it's the easiest way to kind of like absorb stuff through entertainment. So that's why I always say, like, YouTubers like Mr. Beast, these content creators from the US, they're impacting more people. They're on the same comparable level as when I watched Nickelodeon as a kid, because the kids nowadays, they don't really watch TV don't they? Like, I went on a family gathering with my cousins, and all they watched was Mr. Beast. So,
Wow, really?
yeah, they don't watch TV shows anymore. Like nobody, like no kid actually does.
Yeah, no, yeah. Nickelodeon. I mean, you could just see it in the ratings and whatnot. You could just tell. Yeah, that's true. I would say the consumption now is mainly on YouTube. I think the number one job, if you were to go to ask, I don't know how it is like there, but I'm sure this is a worldwide thing. But the number one job request, when kids are in elementary school, it used to be, I want to be a movie star, or I want to be an astronaut, or I want to be a doctor. Now it's, I want to be a creator. I want to be a YouTuber.
Yeah.
Like I want to put myself out there online. So that's I mean, it's a massive shift. There's certainly a shift in that direction, because that's the content that we are consuming now, right? That's the world we live in. So I'm a little the old school side of me, like to make movies and stuff. I don't worry about it too much, because I sometimes get nostalgic on some of the movies that I watch, and I have a kind of refined taste, I like to think, on some of the films that I watch. But I do believe cinema is it's not going to go away. It's not going anytime soon.
Yeah.
Look, like I was just at a play in New York. I showed my fiance the play Hamilton, right? And that show has been going on, God, I don't know for how long. I forgot. It's been years. Like I won't say over a decade now. I have to double check. But anyway, it's been going on for a very long time. Sold out show. Theatrical plays, like that was a thing that happened back in the 1700s. There's only an exclusive amount of people that could watch it. That was, you can go all the way. I mean, actually, you can go all the way back to the Greeks, right? And their amphitheaters in Greece. That hasn't gone away. That's still a specific art form that's still out there for people to take in, right? It's just evolved in a way, right? It's just evolved now. It's like you can go to the most exclusive place to go to is in New York, but you're still going to have that. I like to think I apply the same mindset for cinema. Like there'll still be a cinemas out there. It's just a matter of how much people are consuming cinema versus how much people are just like consuming content. I'm aware that most people are consuming more content than they are movies. But I mean, that's where you got to adapt to, right? That's why I kind of juggle. I like to juggle in both worlds. I kind of get a lot of shit for it, actually, sometimes, believe it or not, from specifically some of my filmmaker friends. Oh yeah, they're like, there's some filmmaker friends that haven't quite. I'm putting this nicely. They just haven't quite understood social media, at least jumping over to it in the way that, and in the way that that helps move their career forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, you can see it. I think cinema won't go away, because I know some movie releases that only release on like streaming platforms and they flop really bad. I don't think anything can kind of replace the cinema going experience. I'm a big cinema nut and movie nut as well. So like I couldn't imagine just sitting down watching it on a streaming platform instead of actually going to a cinema, buying popcorn, sitting down 2 hours of just watching that movie. So I don't think it's gonna go away. I like to believe so. Yeah. Oh, for sure. But yeah, so we're coming up in the 1 hour and 10 mark. So one last question I would want to ask you, Frank, is can you tell the audience of any upcoming projects that you'd like to share that you're excited about?
Oh, man. Good question. Okay, so on the movie spectrum, I have a film that I'd helped produce called The Line. It stars Alex Wolff, Alston Abrams. It was actually one of Angus Cloud's last films. Kind of a Lord of the Flies set in a fraternity, loosely based on a true story. It went to Tribeca last year. That's getting a release, limited run in September 22nd to be exact. And then it'll be on Hulu by December. I'd say early December of this year. So there's that to look out for, at least on the film spectrum. On the content spectrum, there's a lot of stuff I'm producing, and I'm putting stuff out there on my own podcast, Persistence of Vision. I invite 2 other collaborators and other collaborators I've invited, like that I've worked with in my career. I'm putting a lot of focus and energy into that, as well as building out a filmmaking community, because at the end of the day, that's what we're all trying to do. We're all trying to work with each other, right? So I'm at a point in my career where I can now talk about that, or I feel comfortable talking about that as a professional. And yeah, that's really it. That's really been my focus. There's other, I don't know, I'm allowed to say, but there are other creators that I am working with. I signed an NDA on some of them, where I'm coming on as a producer to kind of consult on how to execute some of these videos. But yeah, if you want more information on that, feel free, send me an email, hi@frankponce.tv. You can also find me on Instagram, at Frank Ponce. That's it. I was very lucky to get that one very early, at Frank Ponce. I had someone try to reach out that wanted that, that wanted that domain a long time ago.
Yeah, awesome. That was actually my next question. The last question, like where they can follow you. So Instagram, email hi@frankponce.tv. Follow this guy. This guy's a legend. But yeah, that's all the questions I had for you today, Frank. Really appreciate you hopping on this podcast. Really, really informative. I'm sure the audience listening will have a field day, listening to your insights, working with some of the biggest names in the industry, and your insights on AI and film production. But yeah, man, any closing remarks at all before we end?
No, I appreciate you, man. No, thank you. I appreciate your team, man. Tell everybody I said hey.
Of course.
Yeah, man, I can't wait to work together again. Hopefully pretty soon.
Yes, sir. Just keep me updated through WhatsApp, and we'll talk again soon.
Sounds good, brother. Sounds good. This was fun.
All right.
I appreciate it, man.
This is really fun. Thank you so much, man.
No, thank you.